Deathworlder Cadet shatters all limits, leaving alien sergeants in awe. The Galactic Military Academy, revered as the pinnacle of elite training centers, gleamed under the metallic blue glow of Taldora V's twin moons. In its grand halls, cadets from across the universe, a kaleidoscope of forms, from gaseous beings to crystalline warriors, marched and trained with precision. For centuries, the Academy prided itself on its rigid standards and unbending rules, a testament to the galaxy's commitment to excellence and order. Until Nina Valentine, the Academy's first human recruit, walked through its towering doors. Nina had been an anomaly from the start, standing at an average human height with a lithe frame that belied her strength. She possessed eyes that gleamed with a mischievous spark and a grin that whispered of trouble. Clad in the Academy's standard uniform, she looked deceptively ordinary, but the instructors soon learned she was anything but. Sergeant Crixlax, a being of crystalline structure whose voice resonated like the ringing of chimes, had heard of Earthlings. To him, they were an odd species from a so-called death world, a place rife with unpredictable weather, predatory fauna, and hazardous environments. Yet, nothing prepared him for the humans' disregard for universal norms. Cadet Valentine, he began, his crystalline face refracting beams of light as if nervously shifting. Today's drill is simple. Maintain your form in zero gravity. The drill was routine. Hundreds of cadets, with appendages ranging from tendrils to pseudopods, had passed it without incident, but as the gravitational field dissipated, Nina pushed off the platform with a fluid movement and executed an acrobatic spin, her body bending in ways the Academy's instructors had never seen. She twisted, flipped, and used the momentum to rebound off surfaces, gliding effortlessly while the rest of the class drifted aimlessly. Officer Bubbles, a gelatinous lifeform whose reactions were often punctuated by bubbles rising through its translucent mass, quivered with visible stress. Cadet Valentine, that is not regulation movement, it blubbered, its form vibrating with anxiety. But Nina only laughed, the sound sharp and clear in the sterile training room. Hold my coffee and watch this, she muttered under her breath as she twisted mid-air, landing with an audacious pirouette on the very edge of the floating platform. Sergeant Crixlax was speechless, his crystalline exterior pulsing with a chaotic spectrum of colors that signified confusion, awe, and perhaps a touch of dread. This was not in the manual. No cadet had ever treated zero gravity as a playground. Is this some kind of human defiance ritual? Lieutenant Pax 12, a metallic entity whose voice clicked in analytical tones, queried. Its circuits whirred audibly as it struggled to compute Nina's moves against known physical laws. Despite its computational power, the display did not fit into any existing framework. Meanwhile, Commander Vex, a chameleon-like being whose skin reflected his mood, watched from a distance, his form shifting to a deep, contemplative indigo. Interesting, he muttered. Humans treat limitations not as boundaries but as mere suggestions. As Nina dismounted with a final flourish and a wink to her stunned peers, the murmurs among the alien cadets turned to whispers of respect and fear. This human, with her relentless spirit, was something the Academy had never prepared for, and it was only the beginning. The following day, the Galactic Military Academy buzzed with heightened anticipation. Word had spread like a plasma storm. The human cadet, Nina Valentine, had broken every protocol known to the Academy in a single zero-gravity drill. Cadets from all corners of the galaxy exchanged speculative glances as they prepared for the next training exercise. Sergeant Crixlax, still visibly unsettled by yesterday's events, now sported a deeper hue, a signal of apprehension. Today's task was meant to be straightforward, a test of endurance and composure during a simulated environmental challenge. The cadets were to run a gauntlet through a rapidly shifting terrain designed to mimic the harshest conditions in the galaxy, spanning icy wastelands, molten plains, and windswept ridges. It was a test that pushed even the most resilient trainees to their limits. Cadets, step forward, Crixlax's voice echoed with its usual chime-like authority. He turned his many-faceted eyes toward Nina, who stood among the other recruits, her posture loose and eyes scanning the course with casual interest. He couldn't help but wonder what rule she would break this time. The signal blared, and the cadets surged forward. Immediately, a thin layer of frost enveloped the ground, causing most recruits to tread cautiously. A Varnishian with 6 legs stumbled, its hooves skidding on the ice, while a four-armed selection clung to a metallic pillar to maintain balance. Amid the chaos, Nina's movements were different. She wasn't merely enduring the test, she was playing with it. With each patch of shifting terrain, Nina adapted seamlessly. On the icy plains, she moved like a figure skater, using momentum to glide rather than fight for traction. When molten pathways opened up, spewing streams of superheated gas, she leapt with precision, landing on narrow, glowing rocks as if she'd rehearsed this 1,000 times. The wind tunnels? They only served to propel her forward with greater force. Commander Vex, who had arrived to observe, watched with a mixture of disbelief and amusement. His chameleon skin flashed from orange, the color of excitement, to teal, which signaled concern. "What is she made of?" he muttered to himself. Officer Bubbles was not as composed. Its gelatinous body shook violently as each of Nina's maneuvers sent waves of agitation rippling through its mass. "This is catastrophic," it gurgled. "She's destabilizing the entire pace of the exercise." "She's mastering it," Lieutenant Pax 12 corrected, its mechanical voice tinged with what could only be called robotic awe. "This behavior is consistent with human accounts from Deathworld archives. They find ways to thrive in environments meant to suppress." Back on the field, Nina sprinted through the final challenge, a barrage of gravitational anomalies that shifted weight and pressure unpredictably. Most cadets struggled to stay upright, falling to their knees or lying flat to maintain some semblance of control. But Nina? She used the bursts of gravity to propel herself in elegant arcs, somersaulting through fields of crushing force with a grin that said she was enjoying every moment. The final stretch lay ahead, and with a defiant push, she vaulted over a wall of shifting energy, landing in a roll that brought her to her feet just as the timer sounded. Silence followed. Even the most stoic alien cadets exchanged wide-eyed glances. Crixlax stepped forward, unable to disguise the chorus of colors playing across his crystalline form. "Cadet Valentine," he began, his voice straining to maintain authority. "You are aware that this exercise was meant to test your composure and adaptability?" "Yup," Nina said, dusting herself off and flashing a disarming smile. "Adaptation. That's what we do best on Earth." Officer Bubbles made a slurping noise that was half gasp, half resignation, while Commander Vex's skin shifted to a thoughtful maroon. The Academy was seeing the essence of what it meant to be human, not just resilient, but boundlessly creative, almost reckless in the pursuit of overcoming challenges. In the distance, murmurs turned to whispers. Did she just use the anomalies to accelerate? Is that even possible? One by one, even the most skeptical instructors began to see it. This human cadet was not merely surviving, she was redefining the Academy's understanding of what limits meant. And every alien sergeant, for the first time, felt a pang of anticipation, wondering what this human would do next. Training days at the Galactic Military Academy were becoming legendary, each more jaw-dropping than the last. What had once been routines designed to push the limits of the most advanced beings in the galaxy now served as the backdrop for Nina Valentine's feats of ingenuity and bold defiance. It wasn't just that she passed the challenges, it was how she did it, with flair, humor, and a nonchalant attitude that turned awe into disbelief. Today's exercise was an obstacle course of logic and dexterity, a massive, interconnected arena filled with puzzles that required not just strength but a keen mind. Each section was programmed with tasks like assembling alien machinery under time constraints or navigating mazes laced with moving laser grids. It was a test that left even seasoned cadets panting for breath, their alien appendages trembling with exertion and stress. "Cadets, ready yourselves." Sergeant Crixlax's crystalline voice resonated through the cavernous training hall, accompanied by the metallic clink of aliens adjusting their gear. The sergeant's shifting hues betrayed the anxiety he now carried every time Nina stepped forward. Nina bounced lightly on her toes, her eyes scanning the course with the enthusiasm of someone about to take on an amusement park ride. To her side, a 10th Lorian cadet with bioluminescent tentacles shivered, muttering in its native tongue. The translation chip hummed in Nina's ear, "She'll break reality again, won't she?" The start signal pierced the air, and cadets dove into the course, their movements methodical and precise. Nina, however, burst forward with explosive energy, her laughter echoing as she slid beneath a laser grid, barely missing its sweeping beam. Officer Bubbles, who had taken on monitoring duties today, emitted a deep, resonant gurgle that could only be described as panic. She's not assessing. She's reacting on impulse, it blurted, small bubbles erupting from its translucent surface. Commander Vex folded his arms, watching from the observation deck. The shifting hues of his skin pulsed between dark blues and silvers, reflecting fascination. Impulse may be her greatest asset, he remarked, drawing puzzled glances from the other instructors. Within the maze of shifting panels, cadets use cautious, programmed approaches to solve the puzzles. Nina, on the other hand, seemed to approach each task like a dance. She threw together alien components that should not have fit, patching them with wire she had snatched from a nearby station. Sparks flew, and a monitor flared to life, displaying a solved code. She winked at a stunned trio of Relaxians beside her and said, "We call this winging it on Earth." Winging? Wings? Lieutenant Pack's 12 circuits buzzed in visible frustration. Humans do not have wings. The analogy is statistically illogical. The lieutenant's internal processors hummed louder as it attempted to recalculate Nina's actions into something comprehensible. Further into the course, Nina reached a vertical tunnel where gravity fields shifted erratically, threatening to send any cadet tumbling back to the start. Most trainees halted to study the patterns, their eyes flicking nervously between illuminated signals. Nina took a deep breath, shouted, "Here goes nothing," and launched herself in with perfect timing. The alien crowd gasped as she used each pulse of gravity as a springboard, flipping through the tunnel with grace. Sergeant Crixlax's voice, a symphony of crystalline vibrations, stuttered. "Cadet Valentine, please inform me that you have studied gravitational inertia." His question trailed off as Nina emerged from the other side with a triumphant flourish, landing on her feet with only a slight stumble. She beamed, taking a mock bow. "Physics is just another puzzle to solve, sir." For a moment, silence reigned in the training hall, punctuated only by the humming of circuits and murmurs of disbelief. Even the most stoic alien instructors found themselves glancing at each other, unable to dismiss the reality unfolding in front of them. "This EA cadet," Pax 12 intoned slowly, "has introduced variables that may require a new algorithmic approach to all simulations." In the background, Officer Bubbles gurgled softly, "Or we need a stronger substance to manage the stress." With each challenge, Nina Valentine was transforming from an anomaly into a legend. The Academy, once a fortress of strict adherence to protocol, was bending around her, reshaping its understanding of what training, ingenuity, and limits truly meant. And as whispers of the Deathworlder spread through the galaxy, the instructors could only prepare for what might come next, knowing that in Nina's world, the impossible was merely an invitation to do more. The Academy was shifting, not just in tone but in spirit. What had once been a place where trainees memorized drills and passed predetermined tests now buzzed with an undercurrent of anticipation, tinged with disbelief. Alien cadets of every form and origin exchanged stories about Nina Valentine, the human who, with each training day, challenged and redefined their concept of capability. This day was no different, except the challenge was rumored to be the hardest yet. The scenario was a simulated battle against holographic drones programmed with adaptive learning algorithms. Unlike any prior training, these drones were designed to evolve in real time, outsmarting even the most seasoned tacticians. The objective was simple: survive and disable as many drones as possible within 15 minutes. Sergeant Crixlax stood at the head of the briefing room, his crystalline body refracting anxious bursts of light. "Cadets," his voice rang with gravity, "this test is to measure your strategic thinking under the most hostile and evolving circumstances. Do not attempt rash maneuvers. Adopt, calculate, and execute with precision." A wave of respectful nods followed, with eyes wide and serious, all except Nina's. She leaned back, balancing on her chair with her hands behind her head. A playful grin plastered across her face. "Sounds like fun." Sergeant Crixlax's facets dimmed for a moment, a telltale sign of his growing exasperation. He cleared his throat, or the crystalline equivalent of it. "Cadet Valentine, I urge you to approach this exercise with utmost seriousness." Nina tilted her head, eyes sparkling with an edge of challenge. "Oh, don't worry, sir, I take having fun very seriously." The training hall transformed into a vast arena brimming with simulated environments, a jungle of twisted metal vines, jagged rocky outcrops, and flickering holographic barriers. The cadets entered and immediately spread out, their strategies already forming in their minds. Drones began to materialize, sleek, silvery things that hummed with menace and flashed with adaptive intelligence. Nina didn't hang back. Instead, she sprinted forward into the heart of the challenge, triggering the attention of several drones at once. Their sensors locked onto her, and in a synchronized dance of flashing lights, they attacked, firing pulses of energy. She ducked, rolled, and vaulted over obstacles, her movements fluid and unpredictable. Commander Vex observed from the control room, his skin a deep, analytical teal as he tracked Nina's erratic path. She's drawing them in, but to what end? He murmured, leaning forward. One by one, alien cadets used precise maneuvers to take down drones, their movements efficient but cautious. Nina, by contrast, seemed to be testing the limits of each drone's programming, deliberately making sudden feints and unexpected reversals. The drones adapted quickly, recalibrating their attacks. She grinned, sweat beading on her brow. "You're smart little buggers, aren't you?" she muttered, rolling to grab a loose metal bar. Officer Bubbles watched from the sidelines, quivering in visible dismay as Nina charged forward, wielding the bar like a staff. "This cannot be happening," it whispered, bubbles popping in agitated clusters. The drones, sensing the threat, increased their offensive, unleashing rapid-fire pulses. Nina spun, using the bar to deflect shots, the sound of metal striking energy reverberating throughout the arena. She shifted her weight and leapt into a wide arc, landing behind a drone before driving the bar into its core with a forceful jab. The drone shuddered, sputtered, and dimmed into a lifeless husk. Lieutenant Pax 12's mechanical eyes zoomed in, his processors whirring audibly. Her decision-making process, it's not random, it's adaptive, matching the drone's own learning algorithms. Suddenly, a new wave of drones emerged, their sleek forms now glowing with an angry red hue, a sign they had collectively evolved a more aggressive strategy. The atmosphere thickened, the sound of energy pulses blending into a cacophony of tension. But Nina just laughed. "Time to kick it up a notch," she called out, jumping onto an overhead scaffold. As she swung herself up, a burst of energy narrowly missed her feet, scorching the metal. Using her momentum, she flipped herself over, dislodging a heavy chain in the process. It fell, scattering drones below and giving her a split-second advantage. Sergeant Crixlax's voice came through the comm system, vibrating with rare, uncontrolled tension. "Valentine, you are advised to retreat to a safer zone." She tapped her ear as if considering the suggestion, a mischievous smirk playing on her lips. And missed the best part? Not a chance. Her eyes caught sight of a drone that had sidled close, its sensors already adapting to her moves. She tossed her makeshift staff, diverting its focus for just enough time to tackle it with a sudden, sharp twist. The drone sparked and collapsed. The room fell silent as the timer reached 0. The holograms flickered off, leaving a scene of panting cadets and disabled drones. Nina stood among them, catching her breath, eyes bright and full of a defiance that bordered on joyful. Commander Vex finally spoke, his voice echoing with a tone the cadets rarely heard: admiration. "Today, we have learned that adaptation is not the sole domain of programming and logic. It belongs, irrevocably, to the human spirit." Crixlax's crystalline body shifted to a complex shade, somewhere between exasperation and begrudging pride. Officer Bubbles simply slumped, a quivering puddle of what could only be interpreted as resigned acceptance. Nina met their eyes, wiped a smudge of sweat from her brow, and grinned. "So, what's next?" And for the first time, the Academy was left without an answer. The tension in the Academy's training hall had not dissipated by the end of the day. Conversations buzzed through the corridors, echoing with awe and disbelief. Instructors huddled in urgent discussions, their voices bouncing off metallic walls as cadets exchanged stories. Nina Valentine had become the talk of Taldora 5, a symbol of boundless energy and the kind of audacity that defied comprehension. That evening, Commander Vex convened a meeting with the senior instructors in the council chamber. The room's high ceiling arched with intricate alien designs, and the ambient glow from the wall panels shifted as discussions grew heated. "We need to decide how to proceed," Sergeant Crixlax said. His crystalline body casting refracted rainbows as he spoke. "Cadet Valentine has proven capable. Yes, but her approach undermines the order we instill in our trainees. Officer Bubbles, still a little deflated from the day's events, gurgled in agreement. Her unpredictability is destabilizing. The other cadets are already attempting to mimic her methods. This could erode discipline. Commander Vex listened, the silvery hues of his skin shifting as he pondered. His gaze fell to Lieutenant Pax 12, who sat with worrying eyes and circuits flickering in deep thought. Valentine's success isn't just luck or chaos, Pax 12 stated, his voice modulated with mechanical precision. It's a blend of rapid adaptability and instinct, honed by the environment of her home planet. She doesn't disregard protocol, she operates in a realm beyond it. Silence followed, the room steeped in contemplation. Finally, Commander Vex nodded. Perhaps it is not our methods she challenges, but our understanding of them. The meeting disbanded with no clear resolution, leaving a charged atmosphere behind. In the barracks, Nina sat on her cot, tightening her bootstraps and eyeing the neon skyline through a narrow window. Her mind buzzed with thoughts of the day's training. She could still feel the hum of adrenaline in her veins, the satisfying thrum of pushing past what others thought possible. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. It was Pax 12, its polished frame reflecting the dim glow of the hall lights. Cadet Valentine, it said, its voice softer than usual. The Academy has seen much today. They need time, but they will come to understand. Nina raised an eyebrow, the corner of her mouth lifting in a smirk. Understand what, exactly? That you're not here to break rules, Pax 12 continued. You're here to redefine them. Nina's smirk grew into a full smile. Funny, that's exactly what I had in mind. The next morning, an unexpected announcement crackled through the Academy's calm system. All cadets to the Grand Arena at dawn. Mandatory attendance. The arena, capable of holding thousands, buzzed with a different kind of energy. Cadets and instructors alike filled the seats as the central platform was bathed in a brilliant light. Commander Vex stepped forward, his skin shifting to a contemplative emerald. Cadets, instructors, today is not just an exercise. It is a testament to how far we have come and how far we are willing to go. His gaze found Nina in the sea of trainees. Today, we will test not just skill, but perspective. The challenge was unprecedented, a cooperative exercise where cadets were paired with instructors to solve a crisis-level scenario and escalating simulation of a station malfunction involving alien technology and problem-solving in real time. Nina's partner? Sergeant Crixlax himself. The holographic simulation began, erupting into life with warning lights and an automated voice blaring distress signals. The scenario was a malfunctioning reactor, its core threatening to breach. Crixlax moved swiftly, issuing commands with crystalline clarity, but Nina moved faster, her hands already tracing circuits on the console. Stop, Cadet Valentine, Crixlax snapped, his body refracting sharp red lines of stress. Nina glanced at him, fingers still dancing over the panel. Trust me, sir, just this once. A moment of hesitation flickered across his form. Then, with a resigned clink of crystal, he stepped aside, observing as Nina rerouted power, bypassed damaged relays, and activated an emergency coolant system. Sparks flew, and the hum of the reactor shifted from an angry growl to a steady purr. Silence gripped the arena. Then, a roar of applause erupted from the cadets and even the most rigid of instructors. Crixlax's colors shifted from crimson to a soft lavender, a sign of rare acceptance. He turned to Nina, his voice resonating with newfound respect. Cadet Valentine, today you did more than avert a crisis. You proved that creativity and protocol can coexist. Nina saluted, her grin reflecting the pride of a human who knew she had just changed the Academy forever. In that moment, the rigid, immovable traditions of the Galactic Military Academy bent, just a little, around the unstoppable force that was humanity. And from that day on, the phrase "hold my coffee and watch this" became a part of Academy legend, whispered with both awe and trepidation throughout the galaxy. The weeks following Nina Valentine's historic training exercise were marked by a palpable shift in the Academy's culture. What was once a rigid institution built on rote learning and precision had started to embrace the chaos that Nina brought with her. Cadets began to approach their training with newfound enthusiasm, questioning strategies and improvising where they once followed orders without a second thought. The phrase, "hold my coffee and watch this," was now heard throughout the halls, echoing in jest but tinged with genuine admiration. Commander Vex watched these changes unfold with a mixture of pride and uncertainty. He knew that embracing new ideas meant shaking the foundations of their most deeply held beliefs. It also meant more challenges, more unknowns, and that was what worried him. One afternoon, Vex called Nina to his office. The room was stark, with deep blue walls and panels that glowed softly, displaying the shifting galaxies beyond. He sat at a polished desk, the surface reflecting the myriad colors of his skin as he contemplated his words. Nina stepped in with her typical stride, confident but curious. "Commander, you called for me?" "Yes, Cadet Valentine," he said, his skin a meditative deep green. "You've been here long enough to understand that this academy was built on centuries of tradition. Your methods, while unorthodox, have shown us that our traditions might not be enough when faced with the unpredictable." She tilted her head, waiting for him to continue. "We've received intelligence," Vex said, his tone shifting to a more serious note, "a distress signal from the outer reaches. It's from a planetary outpost on Zeer Prime, a region known for its gravitational anomalies and volatile atmosphere. We're sending a team, and I want you on it." Nina's eyes lit up, the challenge sparking a fire within her. "And the catch?" "The catch," Vex said, his skin darkening to a stormy gray, "is that the mission will be led by Sergeant Crixlax." A beat of silence passed as Nina digested the news. Working with Crixlax in a controlled environment was one thing. A real mission was another. The sergeant's strict adherence to protocol clashed with her tendency to trust her instincts and make quick, off-the-cuff decisions. She nodded, her grin undeterred. "Understood, sir. When do we leave?" The shuttle hummed as it broke through Zeer Prime's turbulent atmosphere. Inside, Nina sat across from Sergeant Crixlax, who was meticulously scanning the mission brief, each tap of his crystalline fingers against his datapad sounding like chimes of tension. Officer Bubbles sat nearby, trembling slightly as the shuttle rocked. Lieutenant Pax 12, ever analytical, adjusted its internal processors to map out potential routes based on environmental variables. "Remember," Crixlax said, breaking the silence, "this mission is one of precision. Deviations from protocol could be catastrophic." Nina raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She knew better than to argue before the real test began. The outpost was a skeletal structure, its metal frame twisted from the gravitational anomalies that raged around it. The ground was unstable, cracking and shifting underfoot. The team disembarked, and immediately, Nina's instincts flared. The air was thick with an electric charge, and each breath felt like it came with a warning. A sudden rumble interrupted their assessment. The ground splintered, and from beneath the surface, an enormous geyser of molten gas erupted, splitting the team. Crixlax shouted commands, his voice ringing out like sharp, clear notes. "Form defensive positions, secure the outpost." But Nina had already moved, her boots skidding as she sprinted toward a control panel half buried in debris. She could see the energy readings surging out of control. Something below the surface was triggering a chain reaction. "Valentine, get back to the safe zone." Crixlax's voice cut through the chaos. She ignored him. Instead, she tore a length of insulated wire from the panel and began rerouting power. The heat singed her hands as she worked, and the ground beneath her feet shifted like it might collapse at any moment. Just as she connected the last wire, the geyser stuttered, then hissed into silence. The rumble eased, leaving only the sound of their collective breath. Crixlax approached, a myriad of colors flashing across his form in quick succession. "That was reckless," he said, but there was a new note in his voice, one Nina recognized as grudging respect. Nina met his gaze, her eyes fierce. "It was necessary." The sergeant held her stare for a moment before nodding once, sharp and short. The rest of the team exchanged glances, the significance of the moment settling among them. For the first time, Crixlax wasn't just tolerating Nina's methods, he was beginning to see their value. The mission continued with the team working in sync, blending Crixlax's calculated strategies with Nina's rapid-fire problem-solving. Pax 12 provided real-time data adjustments while Officer Bubbles, for the first time, managed to stay remarkably composed, its usual tremors reduced to faint ripples. as they secured the outpost and transmitted their findings back to the Academy. Commander Vex's voice came through their comms, tinged with a pride that reached across the light years. Team, your mission was not only a success but a testament to what the Academy can become when we embrace the unpredictable. Crixlax's crystalline form glimmered with a shade of deep purple resolve. He turned to Nina, this time with the slightest hint of a smile. Perhaps there's more to learn from Earth's winging it after all. Nina chuckled, brushing the soot from her uniform. Maybe we'll even add it to the protocol. Sir. For once, the sergeant didn't protest, and as they boarded the shuttle, ready to return, the Galactic Military Academy felt just a little bit closer to something new. Something greater, a unity where tradition and innovation met, sparked by the human who refused to do anything less than shatter every limit. You said. The team's return to the Galactic Military Academy was met with silence at first, the kind of silence that spoke volumes, charged with a mixture of disbelief, awe, and the faint whisper of change. As Nina Valentine stepped off the shuttle, soot still smudged across her face, she felt the collective eyes of the Academy on her. Cadets lined the corridors, instructors stood with arms crossed or appendages coiled, and whispers of the Deathworlder rippled through the crowd. Sergeant Crixlax, his crystalline body now reflecting a calm, steady lavender, led the team toward the debriefing hall. His stride was no longer rigid with disapproval but infused with the confidence of someone who had witnessed something fundamental shift. Commander Vex stood waiting, his chameleon skin oscillating between shades of triumph and contemplation. Well done, team, Vex began, his voice filling the chamber. Your mission report has already reached the council. It confirms what we've seen these past weeks, that a new chapter for this academy is unfolding, one that blends tradition with the spark of ingenuity. The murmurs grew louder, cadets leaning into each other, sharing glances filled with questions and excitement. Nina felt a twinge of pride but held it back, watching the commander's face as he turned his gaze toward her. Cadet Valentine, Vex said, his tone shifting to one of formal gravity. Your performance has not only tested the limits of our training but has inspired a re-evaluation of what those limits should be. Nina straightened, the smirk she often wore now tempered by the significance of the moment. Thank you, sir, she said, voice steady. The room erupted in a rare wave of applause, first hesitant, then building into a rolling wave that enveloped the hall. Nina turned to see Crixlax nodding slightly, his crystalline facets shimmering with the faintest glint of pride. Even Officer Bubbles, usually a quivering mess of anxiety, let out a bubbly exhale that was almost relieved. Over the next few days, the Academy's routines shifted. New training exercises were introduced, ones that emphasized adaptability and creative thinking. Cadets now spoke openly of using Valentine's Gambit, a term coined for quick, unconventional problem-solving that became a staple of strategy discussions. Protocol manuals were updated, with an appendix titled Adaptive Protocols for Extreme Situations, featuring examples of how humans, especially one infamous cadet, had changed the way they viewed survival and success. Sergeant Crixlax, once the bastion of strict adherence to regulations, found himself conducting drills that encouraged cadets to think outside of their rigid training. He stood at the training grounds one morning, watching a group of recruits navigate a zero-gravity maze in ways that would have once driven him to shatter with stress. Now, he observed with an unreadable expression, until a subtle shift in his hue revealed approval. Nina's reputation spread beyond Taldora 5. Galactic councils from distant star systems began requesting reports on the human cadets' methods. Words like ingenuity and adaptability echoed in diplomatic conversations, and what started as curiosity soon blossomed into deeper respect for Earth's unpredictable resilience. Months passed, and the Academy flourished with new perspectives. Nina was no longer just a cadet but a symbol. Invitations came for her to speak at interstellar summits, where she shared her philosophy: limits are only as real as the fear that binds them. Dare to test them, and you'll find that the universe isn't as unforgiving as it seems. Sergeant Crixlax, now a supporter rather than a skeptic, often accompanied her, his crystalline body a testament to the lesson he, too, had learned. Sometimes the most unbreakable thing isn't discipline, but the willingness to embrace change. One day, Nina stood on the Academy's central observation deck, looking out at the vast expanse of stars. The Academy, now a beacon of innovation, bustled below with cadets who trained not just to follow, but to lead, adopt, and thrive. Commander Vex approached, his reflective skin shifting to a calm blue. "The council has made a decision," he said, a rare smile playing at his lips. "They want you to lead a team on an exploratory mission to the Andromedian Rift, a test of all you've inspired here." Nina turned, a grin spreading slowly across her face. "I hope they're ready for a little chaos." Vax chuckled, a deep, resonant sound. "I think they finally are." And so, with a final nod and the stars calling her name, Nina Valentine stepped forward, no longer just a cadet but a legend, bound for a future where limits were meant to be broken and the galaxy was an open canvas, waiting for the brushstrokes of a human's indomitable spirit. The Galactic Military Academy, once an unyielding fortress of protocol, now stood as a testament to the resilience and brilliance of a species that, when faced with the impossible, simply shrugged, grinned, and said, "Hold my coffee and watch this."